that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna try and do on case and then off case, but if it doesn't occur that way, I apologize. I'm kind of just using notes.
Okay, that's good. Don't worry.
Okay, to begin, we would like the judge to acknowledge that all of our cards should be extended. The negative tried to group all of these cards together. That's impossible. Even if it was possible, they never answered any of these advantages or extended upon any of these answers. You can't judge the round based on analytics. Analytics are not substantial. They're not evidence. They're not actuality. They're opinion essentially. We'd also like to extend our framework. They never addressed that as well. Also, we would just like to argue against their critique. It has no solvency, so it shouldn't be taken seriously. It has no links, no internal links. How are we supposed to accept this critique if it's not a viable critique, essentially? They mentioned in the 2NC how our world is anti-black, but they provided no links or no internal links regarding this. You can't jump from A to Z and expect it to be weighed around. They mention how policy is racist and say that anti-blackism is the problem with the government. And they even presented their Shaw 4 card. However, their Shaw 4 card should not be weighed. It addresses how framework is flawed because of racist structure, but never really explicitly defines how it's flawed. Therefore, it should not be weighed. As my partner said, this is a generic critique with no link. When arguing a debate, the negative has to prove how their critique is unique, how it links to the resolution or to our case. They fail to do this. This is one they could use for essentially any affirmative case. They fail to, like I said, they fail to present internal links, fail to understand internal links. They mention our Glazer 13 card and tries to relate it to a demonstration of anti-blackness. That's a clear misinterpretation of what the card itself says, as well as the tagline. The Glazer 13 card demonstrates terrorism and how drone strikes link the United States to terrorism. They're also in their 2NC, they said they're not making this a race issue, yet in their 1NC, they said, as it's written on the card, that our plan was a violation because it doesn't address structures of black violence, but then said that we are seeing the policy through anti-black eyes. But if it's not a race issue, why are we focusing on black or white? That just contradicts themselves and makes a confusion for everybody around. They say that policy is racist, but can't really prove that policy is racist, so that shouldn't be weighed. They said that our world is anti-black. They never really explained this card. In our current world, in our current events going on right now, wouldn't you argue that the world is realistically anti-Middle Eastern? Isn't that abusive? We're not saying that, we're not arguing anti-blackness, or we're not saying blackness, Middle Eastern, we're saying that through our plan we can help make the world better, which is the job of the affirmative. The job is the negative, is to counteract that plan, is to provide links, to provide solvency, to provide some type of viable evidence as to why the affirmative plan should not be enacted. They failed to do this. Therefore, they argued that we challenged their critique, but then argued our argumentation of the critique. We're being forced to challenge this critique because of their presentation of it, because of the actuality of it being presented. They mentioned education. We're involved in debate to become educated. By running a generic critique that can be rehashed and reused for any affirmative, we are lacking education. We are lacking this reform that this education, this learning policy, these techniques that we could use in our future, in our education, in our fields that we are currently in college. This is a college debate tournament. By rehashing general stuff, we're just learning about one thing, not about a variety of topics. They group our advantages together, which I said should not be feasible in any way because they never attack one or this quote-unquote grouping that they do. They mentioned that we don't focus on the oppression of this black and white spectrum, which contradicts themselves in their 1NC, saying that this isn't a race issue, yet they mentioned it was a race issue. Is this an anti-blackism issue, a black-white issue? Like, they never clearly specify what exactly they're arguing, contradicting themselves, making their arguments essentially irrelevant and not relating to anything in the debate. They argue that there's no possibility of nuke war. In our Brill 12 card, which we mentioned should be extended across the flow and fully weighed, we prove that there's a possibility of nuclear war and the actuality that terrorists could attack the United States with these nukes. They explain how anti-blackness is a means of everyone being excluded, I think was the exact quote my opponents used. Is it everyone being excluded? Is it an anti-black issue, or is it a black-white issue? I don't really understand their critique generally, Judge, so how are we supposed to argue against this abusive critique that says some people are being included, some people are excluded? You could argue that any plan anywhere excludes people. There's no realistic way to include every single individual in every single plan ever. They mention nuclear war again, which are Brill 12 and CEDAMED things. Our Brill 12 and CEDAMED cards explain clearly they're abusive. They don't provide any definite definitions, which is abusive to the affirmative. Again, generally this critique in general is completely abusive. They never clarify what exactly is the problem with our plan, which the negative has what the negative is supposed to do. Is that fine?
That's time.